New at 5, we've reported over the last week about the plot of land near Tropicana and Dean Martin purchased by the Oakland A's.
If the team does officially move to Las Vegas, it'd be the first team in Major League history to move 4 times.
Fox 5's Mike Allen takes us through the 123-year history of the team that might soon call Las Vegas home.
Founded at the turn of the 20th century as a charter member of the American League, the Philadelphia Athletics won 6 of the first 14 AL pennants and 3 World Series in the span of just 4 years, thanks to top pitching from guys called Bullet Joe, Gettysburg Eddie, and the Knight of Kennett Square, and star position players like Topsy, Stuffy, and Cocky. Connie Mack owned and managed the team all the way from its founding to the 1950s. He holds the all-time record for wins as a manager, and thanks to his longevity, you probably always will. Mack led the team through another golden era in the late 20s and early 30s, winning a couple more World Series rings with a different set of talented but equally colorful players with names like Mule, Muse, Bing, and Bucketfoot Al. Colorfulness has been a common theme of this franchise through its history, even the lean years after Mack died and the new owner moved the team to Kansas City because of low attendance in Philly. It was in Missouri that the team adopted a radical new color scheme for the time. They're now classic green and gold. The new threads didn't last long in KC though. After 13 years of bad teams and a mostly empty stadium, the team packed up and moved even further west to Oakland, California. The A's had almost immediate success on the West Coast, winning 3 straight World Series in the early 70s. And you guessed it, this team was very colorful too, maybe more so than any team in recent history. The owner, Charlie Finley, gave players bonuses for growing mustaches, and players like Raleigh Fingers took advantage. That team also had an 11-year-old bat boy who later became known as MC Hammer. Fast forward now to the late 1980s. While Hammer, a lifelong A's fan, was making gold records, the A's were bringing more gold back to their trophy case, winning 3 straight pennants and the '89 World Series against Bay Area rival San Francisco, made famous by the devastating earthquake that struck just before Game 3. In the mid-90s, though, things started turning a little sour. The Raiders moved back from Oakland to LA to play football, and owner Al Davis built a mountain of seats right in center field, aptly named Mount Davis. This eyesore, combined with a lack of stadium upkeep, held back attendance even during the Moneyball years, later made famous by Brad Pitt's portrayal of Maverick general manager Billy Beane. Those dismal attendance figures have only gotten worse over the last few years, with the team ranking dead last in attendance each year of this new decade, leading to what seems like an imminent move to Vegas for one of the most storied franchises in baseball. Mike Allen, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
And as of today, the A's have the worst record in baseball this season. But despite their recent struggles, the A's only trail the New York Yankees and St. Louis Cardinals in terms of World Series championships.